Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all back to another episode of Black Law and Legal Lies.
That?
Because it's required of our sponsor for this show.
Oh, Jesus.
My name is Dan and I am one of your hosts. You can keep up with me on Twitter and on IG, where you can watch me do things like box, play the piano, tell jokes, and imitate people from New Orleans, as well as Keith Sweat.
Wait, tell jokes?
Yes.
What jokes?
Follow the show across all social media platforms at Black Law Podcast.
And I'm Just Dan, and you can follow me on Twitter at I Tell Legal Lies. Not that you'll actually see a lot of content. I tend to be less prolific than some people. But if I put things out there, they're things that matter.
She don't be prolificizing like I do.
Oh,
Ladies and gentlemen, this episode, man, do you know how many times I had to edit you clearing your damn throat out of the last episode?
What's wrong with clearing the throat?
When it's in people's ears, it sounds disgusting.
Oh, is that
yeah,
right?
That's right.
That's one of your pet peeves, is it?
No, that's the email that somebody sent me. They couldn't make it through the whole episode because it was the one before last because I didn't have time to edit it like I wanted
just
to.
to let people know, this is pollen season.
Coke drip.
Pollen season.
Coke
and
drip.
I have sinus issues. So, Baxter, did I throw you under the bus? When you said you'll be right in and I said, take your time, did the lady hear me?
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, again, as our third co-host who's been missing for about
50 years?
2020. I think she's been missing for all of 2020.
Really? You know what? I think it might have started in 2019. I felt this withdrawal.
Yeah.
I did. So,
grand entrance. I mean, should I shout the sponsor out now while she's getting set up?
Jesus, who's our sponsor?
Y'all really showed some concern about me since I was supposedly missing. Okay?
Was it Lil Debbie?
Oh no. Well, introduce yourself for the
people who don't know you,
not the viewers.
The listeners who don't know you, because there are some listeners who have started listening who don't know who the hell you are because they've never heard you.
This Afro Becky.
Oh, wow.
And Afro Becky. Tell our new listeners a little bit about yourself. Old listeners know, but new listeners.
If you had to describe yourself in 2 words, what would those words be?
Brilliant and short.
Come dumpster.
That's how you would describe yourself, and I think you're right. I think you are absolutely correct.
Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is proudly brought to you by the makers of Plan B. If you don't want it, neither do we.
Wait, probably by the makers.
Wait, probably.
That's what you said?
Proudly.
Oh, it sounded like probably to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is proudly brought to you by the makers of Plan B, as well as Colgate toothpaste. Same company makes them both.
I was about to say, they're made by the same company.
So today what we're going to get into, our last episode actually got a lot of positive feedback.
Really did it.
Heirs property, yes.
And people were like ticked off that's how black folk got bamboozled and hoodwinked.
I guess so, but to date this year, it is our highest downloaded, listened to episode, and as of today, it's only been out for 2 days.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Like I said, because that was needed. When I ran across an article about this, I had to put it out there. People know, but the Bible says that people perish for a lack of knowledge. This is why this land is being snatched and it's still there. Land is being taken out of the hands of Black families every day
Man,
because of that.
shout to the homie Flaw 702. He is doing a real estate deal with an heir right now.
That right.
And it's funny because the timing of the episode, he said back, man, I hope this is the only heir because you never know.
And that's real.
But
That
what
is
we're going to
real.
talk about this week, ladies and gentlemen, is a topic that we've kind of discussed before, but we're going to approach it at a different angle. That's what she said. And it's going to be affirmative action.
Right.
Now, what we're going to do, I guess we're going to start with me because I probably have the least amount of knowledge in this room when it comes to affirmative action, is what is affirmative action?
That would be the question.
Because prior to recording, I was told that I was wrong. So, affirmative action means, in my opinion, that you need to have a certain number. It's almost like a quota of niggas. And not only that, you need the application process. You need to interview a certain number of minority people, and you need to place them above a well-qualified white man. That's what I got, Becky.
See, because Beck knows. Just like Bo knows, Beck knows affirmative action.
Mic down just a little bit to where it's in front of your mouth and not your nose. There you go.
You have bits and pieces of that. Number one thing that I heard that was wrong was that you have to place them above a qualified white person.
Y'all hear how she hesitated to call me wrong? That's right.
Ninja, please continue.
You have to put them in the same pool of qualified candidates as everybody else, as long as they are qualified for the position that you're hiring them for.
Okay. So explain like from the beginning what exactly affirmative action is.
Well, I think it might be best for our legal person to provide the full and complete definition of affirmative action.
Your first day back, you're just being fucking difficult. Like,
wait, why the girl gotta be difficult?
She's being difficult. I took my stab. I made myself look stupid. Fuck.
Man, you make yourself look stupid just by walking around, man. They don't take much. Shit, it don't take much. Anyway, honestly, I think this is why we wanted to do this show, because you say affirmative action and immediately what comes to mind, it's like affirmative action is synonymous with African American.
Mm-hmm.
You're moving the lower people in front of the line, even though they may not be qualified for the position. That's what a lot of people think.
Right. And that is exactly why we wanted to do this show, to basically dispute people of this erroneous concept. Because although affirmative action is used like that, that is a very small piece. Because, people, they scream about getting rid of affirmative action and we should have affirmative action. And if I can remember correctly, on a show, you even said that about getting rid of affirmative action or something like that. I think I recall that.
We did a show about people wanting to get rid of it, but I never...
I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and
it's
listen.
Somewhere in the 60s, episodes between 60 and 70.
But let's go back a little bit. because, as I said, when you hear affirmative action, people think that's synonymous with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, but affirmative action is something that has been in our country since it harkens back to Reconstruction. So right after the Civil War, were programs put in place by Reconstructionists to help newly freed African Americans. But just like, 2020 and affirmative action laws in general, more often than not, they favor or they help Caucasian women more than African Americans across the board. So, we have people out here that scream about getting rid of affirmative action, and they don't really know what it is they're doing.
So tell us what
they're saying.
What is they be doing?
All right, so let's talk about. So I talked about Reconstruction and how there is a Civil Rights Act, several actually, that are associated with Reconstruction, which what they were supposed to do, the theory behind them was to help newly freed slaves, but in essence, what they really did was favor and help poor white people more than they did poor black people. Because if you write a law that in its infancy and in its inception, at its core, what it's supposed to do is elevate poor people, and you have poor white people, would they not benefit? And they did more often than not. And so move forward to 1930s, 1940s. We remember the New Deal.
I wasn't alive for that.
I wasn't either, but you took some history. You have some knowledge. We know just a little bit. But Great New Deal. Roosevelt,
that would have
right?
been President Roosevelt, and what he did was the American.
What was the biggest program that came out of that?
There was a few actually, and if I may have the floor, President Roosevelt.
Wait, we don't need a history lesson, man. I asked one question.
You just asked for history.
No,
I'm gonna tell you the history.
I said what was
right?
the biggest?
Listen, right. President Roosevelt, he looked at, this was after the war, our economy was in bad shape.
Mm-hmm.
Unemployment was at, for back then standards, at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm.
And, he sat there. Did y'all know that President Roosevelt, he couldn't even walk? He was in a wheelchair.
Man, come on, man.
No, seriously.
Yes, he was. He had polio.
Exactly.
And if this had been the age of TV, Roosevelt probably never would have been president.
Man,
Truly.
they had TV.
They did, but not like it was today.
Not readily accessible.
In
like it is
the
today.
Great New Deal, what they did was the welfare program. That was a big thing. They did the child support system. They did.
I hate you so much. I do.
Oh, and the infrastructure. They really did do
system?
that. Yeah, the infrastructure and stuff like that. Rebuilding Americans' infrastructure and putting people to work by doing that.
Right.
Yep. So Hoover Dam, our interstates, and the other Roosevelt did our national parks and
All
stuff
right.
like that.
So
And the post office.
But in the context of what we're talking about in affirmative action, right? There were two major programs that came out of not just Roosevelt and Ford, 30s and 40s. Well, not Ford, I'm sorry, Truman. 30s and 40s. Two big pieces of legislation that came out of Roosevelt was the New Deal. Truman was right, like what? The fresh something?
The Fresh New Deal. That nigga remixed. He remixed the New
No,
Deal.
it was the fair deal. Truman was the fair deal. All right.
Okay.
So 2 big pieces of legislation that came out of that lines up in context with affirmative action. Social Security
Mm.
and the GI Bill. So, as I said, when we talk affirmative action, this is not a black thing because those 2 pieces of legislation, Social Security and the GI Bill, 98% did not enrich us, African Americans or people of color. GI Bill, when Black soldiers came back from World War II, for the most part, they could not even reap the benefit of the GI Bill.
Let alone their military benefits.
Correct. As far as Social Security was concerned, so Social Security, something else that came out of that was unemployment compensation. I think you mentioned that, Beck, didn't you? Unemployment. Who mentioned that? Somebody did. Well, anyway, so Social Security and the GI Bill were the 2 big ones, the majors. But unemployment, minimum wage protection, also, they were within that time frame.
Okay, let me jump in here. Well, so Social Security, right?
Mhm.
My entire life, I've been hearing that Social Security is probably not going to be around when you get old enough to
Benefit from it.
Yeah.
Because we are currently paying into the system, and supposedly we're paying into the system, and the money that we are paying into the system is being used now.
Right. Now, so the way I understand Social Security works is it comes out of your paycheck and it
your
goes,
employer puts money in as well.
right. The percentage, what's the percentage? Like 6.25?
0.062.
Something like that. And they 0.062%?
No, 6.2%.
Oh. I about to say I've been getting ripped off.
That dude was like, damn, man, what's going on?
Man, so that goes into a big fund, and older people that are of retirement age, they get paid monthly just by being alive from that fund, correct?
It is, they are paid, but what they are paid is based on
Their previous income?
well, how they worked, the length of time that they worked. Beck, being Madam HR over there, I'm sure you're more familiar with the number of years that, or the number, what do they call them? Because it's not years.
It's I think it's 7 years of your highest income years.
Right, but they call them
They're credits,
terms,
aren't they?
right? But it's something that they call your work time. There's a specific term. I can't remember it right now. But anyway, yes, that's how you're paid. But as I was saying, so because we're talking about, like I said, affirmative action and laws that were made for affirmative action. And as far as Social Security was concerned, and the other things that I mentioned, the GI Bill and unemployment and minimum wage, when these things, which are affirmative action programs, because they are specific to certain people, because that when, just as a general term, when we're talking about affirmative action, what affirmative action is a practice or a policy of favoring a certain group of people, right?
Correct.
So when you talk about affirmative action programs, Social Security favors what group of people?
4 people. And old people.
Right. So when you talk about unemployment insurance, it favors unemployed people.
Right.
When you talk about the GI Bill, it favors, correct. So we're talking about affirmative action programs. So they fit within the realm. These programs, when they, at their inception, as I said, did not benefit Black and brown people. they benefited white America because as far as Social Security was concerned, realize these things came about especially for Black people and brown people. We were in the midst of Jim Crow, right? So what inevitably happened, in order to get Southern politicians to support these measures, what the federal government did was allow them to set the law or create the law in such a way that these programs were run by local governments. So if you're in the South, if you're in the South,
I told y'all, if you go to my Instagram page, I imitate people from New Orleans.
If you're in the South and you're under Jim Crow and your local politician is the one that is governing this program, if you're a Black person, are you getting any benefit of it? You're not. So what inevitably happened with Social Security and with unemployment, we know during that time, Black people, they were domestics, right? They're like, what, 90 plus percent of people.
Scrubbing toilets.
Right. They were domestics and they were agriculture. They were like farmers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Social Security and unemployment didn't cover
Those particular fields.
domestics and people in agriculture, farmers.
So did they have to pay into the Social Security?
That's just it.
They didn't have to pay, but they didn't reap the benefits either. Okay.
Right. So, and then in some, I was reading some stuff, they did pay in, but they couldn't get the benefits thereof. So think about the GI Bill. The GI Bill allowed people to get government loans. They had preferences for government loans. They had preferences for jobs, right? And when we talk about, in earlier shows, what we know as far as any family is concerned, the way you build generational wealth, especially for people of color, is through what? Home ownership, right? So
I was going to say robbing people, but okay.
So home ownership. So here you have a GI Bill that is supposed to give you low interest loans to buy a home.
As well as education.
Correct. Send me to top-notch educational institutions for free. And I don't have the benefit of that. So I was doing some research, and this is what I found out about that. And I was like, yeah. So I talked about how those occupations, they were excluded from minimum wage. That minimum wage laws, the occupations that most Black people actually held, they were excluded from that, from Social Security, from unemployment, and from workers' compensation, right? And as far as the GI Bill is concerned, when it was passed and the programs that were attached to it, $95 billion, right, worth of
Gold.
program money, $95 billion worth of money injected into these programs. But here's what the study showed, right? That as of 1946, 6,500 former soldiers had been placed in non-farm jobs by employment services, right, in southern states. 86% of the skilled and semi-skilled jobs were filled by white people. 92% of the unskilled ones by Black people. So, as a result of the GI Bill, on-the-job training was the thing. You didn't have to go to school. They placed you in a program and you apprenticed. And then you earned certification. Couldn't do that. So, and this wasn't just in the South. So this study says that in New York City and in northern New Jersey, fewer than 100 of the 67,000 mortgages that were insured by the GI Bill were purchased by non-white people.
How many percent?
100 out of 67,000.
Okay, so like 0.67%, kind of like Social Security.
So
Wait, so one of the things too I wanted to inject into this is redlining, right? We've heard that term a lot. You know what's crazy is in 2020,
still doing it.
well, we're hearing more about it in 2020 than for the past probably 40 years, damn
And your
near.
president just tweeted something
So
about it.
let's describe to our listeners who may hear the term what redlining is. Becky, you go first.
Redlining is the practice of excluding certain areas or certain neighborhoods from the benefit of a program or a loan or access to funds or a program.
Okay, so basically it is drawing a red line around a neighborhood and saying
You can't inject money into this neighborhood. You can't put programs in this neighborhood that would actually economically benefit
The
people
neighborhood.
in this neighborhood.
now, if you were a cash buyer, could you then purchase in said neighborhood?
See, now here's where our little we harken back to our episode about
What
these
the
covenants.
The covenants,
Yeah.
Racially
Yeah.
restrictive covenants.
Right? So, and remember when we talked about that, that was something that was actually fostered by the federal government once again, because they said unless you had this in that contract, in that mortgage contract, they would not fund. That is basically that has to do with this whole system or these programs that were created that we're talking about today too.
So I guess my little 2 cents right now is that for anybody who doesn't get or doesn't understand why people are protesting, why people are out in the streets, and don't think that we still live in a racist society. These are exactly the policies and procedures and practices that have held us down.
And this is exactly why when we talked about this before, what I said was it is in our DNA. And it is in
the fabric of our country.
This
period.
is so one of the things we talked about previous episode was, let's look at after Hurricane Katrina, the lower Ninth Ward. Historically, Black neighborhoods the property values have been substantially lower than white neighborhoods, even Hispanic neighborhoods, Latino neighborhoods, Asian neighborhoods. So like, let's just say the average cost of a house, I'm making these numbers up, in a Black neighborhood was $80,000, right?
Right.
So the white neighborhood would probably be somewhere around 140, 150 or
Probably
so.
triple that.
Just again, throwing numbers out there. So that house that gets passed down generation after generation after generation, it actually loses value because of the what do you call it? The upkeep.
But it loses value until it doesn't.
And that's what I'm getting at. The so you inherit your great grandmother's house, right? She bought the house for
probably $10.
Yes, $50,000. So she bought it for $50,000. Then your grandmother inherited. She lives there for a while. Then you inherit it from your grandmother. So this is a $50,000 house, and now it needs a new roof because the upkeep just wasn't done on the house.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be renovated, leveled, and all this other shit. So the amount of money that you need to put into this house to just make it livable by today's standards,
Mm-hmm.
let's say $90,000. Being that our source of wealth, as you said, is passed down from property, we hustling backwards because this house that was worth 50, now we got to put 90 in it. Where we going to get the 90 from?
See, and that's exactly how we discussed on the show about this heir property. Because what inevitably happens?
Yeah,
nobody's
they lose
paying
it.
the taxes.
Oh yeah, the taxes too. Forgot about that.
Nobody's paying the taxes, and somebody comes along, buys it for the taxes, and
So,
now,
this is my question to the both of you. We've watched this process happen over and over again, what we like to call
gentrification.
So these neighborhoods get bought out by more affluent white people who do have the 90 grand to fix it up.
Mhm.
So one moves in, they fix the house up, and then another moves in about 5 houses down. And next thing you know, you look up and the entire neighborhood's white. They strip the neighborhood of its culture.
Mhm.
And the people that grew up in that neighborhood, when you come walking through the neighborhood, they're calling the cops on you because, like, yo, nigga, you don't belong here.
But let's talk about this. You talk about where we get the $90,000 from. Okay, here's where that systemic racism that is embedded in the fabric of our society, that is embedded in the programs that are supposed to help these affirmative action programs that are supposed to help us rather than hurt us. Why wouldn't you be able to go to the bank and get a construction loan to fix your house and use the house as collateral?
Why would you want to, though? Because now,
Why would you not?
Well, what you're doing is this is thinking out loud. I haven't thought this fully through, but you're taking a house property that isn't worth very much. Now you're leveraging your
It's worth a lot to you because you're living in it. You have lived in it, and your family has lived in it for generations.
Right, but
And the thing
dollars
is,
and cents.
Yeah, but the problem is you don't know what this property is actually worth. Because most of the time, think about it, as we talked about in the Heirs Property Show and others, you give this property up, you sell it 30 grand,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 seconds later, it's worth 500,000.
Right, but if you stay there and everybody in your neighborhood stays there, then the property value remains suppressed.
Yes, but not if you and everybody else in that neighborhood actually does what gentrifiers do.
Not if you look like you, me, or Becky.
See, but that is the issue that we're talking about right now. But let me tell you, there are neighborhoods in New Orleans that
affluent black neighborhoods.
Correct. Yeah. That regardless of who lives there, the houses in these neighborhoods, the prices
they still won't rival, say, an Old Metairie.
And that's
St.
true.
Charles.
But you know what? I heard something on Sunday that Beyonce that was credited to her. Supposedly she said it. You know, I don't see a seat at the table for me, so I'm gonna chop down a tree and make my own table. My house doesn't have to be worth $500,000.
Right.
My house only has to be worth enough for me to have some value in it so that I can pass that along, that equity, to my child, and my child could in turn do the same thing, that they can leverage it. Maybe they want to live in a different neighborhood, but they have the equity in it to leverage it to go and build somewhere else or to buy somewhere else.
Okay, so what we're going to do is next episode, we've already talked about fiscal responsibility, but next episode, we're going to talk about financial responsibility, which sounds like it's the same thing, but
it's not.
It's not. So this was the question I was going to pose to both of y'all before I got sidetracked. With people moving into our neighborhoods increasing the value of our neighborhoods and our land,
Mm-hmm.
pushing us out. We go find other places to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
At some point, land is finite. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see
China.
Black Americans?
I said China, but you know what? Let me tell you. Eventually, just as you said, land in the United States is finite. It is. Resources are finite. They are. Eventually, there is going to come a tipping point where you can no longer push me out. You can't. Because at some point, as Becky said, this is the reason why people are protesting. This is the reason why people are saying it's time to step up and stand out. Because you can't push me any further. I heard something on the way over. Keisha Lance Bottoms was talking, and she was talking about how the tweet that I mentioned, the president talked about how low income housing, people in suburbia, you no longer have, paraphrasing here, you don't have to worry because low income housing will not push into your neighborhoods. I'm saving suburban America for you, or suburban white America for you, X, Y, and Z. And what Keisha Lance Bottom was talking about was affordable houses for working class people, and in the suburbs. And what she said was, what Donald Trump would have people to believe is low income housing equals Black. That is exactly just like affirmative action is a dog whistle. You hear affirmative action, you think Black.
Black.
You hear low income housing, you think Black. But what you don't understand, or what people don't realize, is when you say low income housing, that is synonymous with working class housing. So who's in the working class? The person who checks you out at a grocery store.
Right.
They ain't all Black. Your mail carrier, they ain't all Black. Garbage men, they ain't all Black. So when you talk about working class housing and affordable housing for low income people, it is not Black people. It is working class people. So let me make this one point, and I'm gonna turn it over to you to say whatever, because we got off track. One other big affirmative action, not program, but offshoot. We talk about the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and what it did. And it did a lot for Black people, true, but it did more for Caucasian people. Once again, like I said, every law and program that people assign to Black programs, when you say because it is affirmative action, inevitably these programs benefit Caucasian Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans more than it does African Americans. So we all familiar with Title IX?
Title IX. That's why I go get my driver's license renewed.
Why, Lord? Why?
Please educate us.
All right. So Title IX was an amendment to it was an educational amendment to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And what it did was say that you could not be discriminated against boiled down basically because of your sex in education in schools that receive federal funding. So when I say on the basis of sex in education, that meant like in sports, in education programs, this and that and the other. You about to say something, Beck?
Well, I was also going to refer to Title VII, which would be on the basis of race.
Mm-hmm.
But Title IX might also if you may want to look up RBG with regard to that.
Yeah, all right.
Mhm.
That's my girl.
Mhm.
So what Title IX did, once again, people think when they hear Title IX, they think sports. But let me tell you what Title IX did as far as affirmative action went. What Title IX did was make it possible for white women to bust open the doors of places like Harvard and Yale University's engineering programs, science programs. So white women who are doctors,
Law programs.
right? White women who are lawyers, white women who are astronauts. Thank you very much, and you're welcome, because that's what Title IX of the Civil Rights Act did. It allowed
It specifically said white women.
No, it said what it said. It said women, right? But during this time, mainly white women walked through the door.
Right, because they were most likely the only reason why they couldn't access those places is because they discriminated against women. But white women had the qualifications
and the money
to get in there. The only reason why they weren't in there was
because they were women. And so here comes Title IX. And once again, you hear Civil Rights Act of 1964, you think black. But inevitably, white women. And have y'all ever heard of something called minority and women business owned business enterprise?
Wait,
I believe
what?
so.
Minority and women owned business enterprise.
Minority and women
Owned business
enterprise.
enterprise.
Malwobi.
So once again, an affirmative action program that you hear minority, you think, oh, black,
Hispanic.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But inevitably, it allowed white women who owned businesses to get government contracts, right? So once again, as I said, we equate affirmative action with black people, but inevitably, every affirmative action program that has ever been written down and made into law has proportionately benefited white America.
So check this, right? Speaking of benefiting white Americans and you hearing things and hearing a certain race attached to it, when you hear welfare, you hear black.
Correct.
Now, what gets me with the welfare shit is majority of the people on welfare are white, but
you don't see them.
It's funny because these are some of the same people that vote against their best interest, and they also look down on black people who are on the same system that they're on. So there was they do this every year. There's senators or legislators who try to introduce new legislation stipulating what you can and cannot buy with food stamps, right? So no, you can't buy seafood. You can't buy steak. You can't buy anything with sugar in it. This, that, and another.
The government basically mandates that you have to get
fruits and vegetables,
2% milk instead of whole milk.
Yeah. So, but these are some of the same people. Some of the white people that are on welfare agree with this shit only because. So I was talking to Paul and he said this shit like. The way he said it, I'm gonna fuck it up. But his wife was asking him, why do so many people still support the president why do so many people still think that COVID is some kind of a joke, and then you have the whole mask shit?
Mhm.
And his response is because it's like, I think her question also was like, it's hurting more white people than black people at the time she asked. His response was, white people who follow and support Trump, they care more about their hatred than themselves.
Correct.
So it's like with the welfare system, how can you be on the same system that I'm on, but yet you look down on me and you want to start adding stipulations that will not only affect you, but hurt you as well?
And you know why? It's because, once again, embedded in the fabric of our DNA, we have fomented the us against them mentality. What elitist white men, because inevitably that's who it is, white men in power, what they want you to think. This is why Donald Trump is always talking about, we're building a wall, we're keeping these people out, right? And we've had this conversation before. The same people who are saying, build a wall, keep these people out, because if we keep them out, you will have jobs.
You don't want them jobs no way.
The problem is, you'll have these jobs and the jobs will pay you $5.99 and you don't want them. But these same people who you are, keep them out, build the wall, those same people who have you all riled up and going against your better interest will turn around, pull into a Home Depot parking lot, look at Pedro and Pepe and go, and pay them $3 to go crawl up on a roof and do some stuff. See, and that within itself, as I said, us against them. And it doesn't matter if I am white and poor, I'm still better than you.
Because you are
Black and poor.
Right.
Right.
So I never understood that shit. It's like, how can you be in the exact same situation like these COVID? I'm not wearing a mask because the president says it's okay, and then they're going around looking to start altercations at grocery stores, at Costco's. You see it a lot at Costco too, and it's like, yo, if you don't like the policy of the store,
don't
right. Fuck your city, your state, whatever. But what would happen right now if we did abolish affirmative action? It's gone. What happens? What's the
they got a whole bunch of white people that's gonna be crying. And there's a whole lot of money that would be siphoned out of. So let's think about, I talked about 1930s and 40s.
Before I forget too, you siphoning money.
Who's siphoning money?
Did you know how much PPP money the Catholic Church got?
Probably like $100 million.
4.3 billion.
Stop playing. Well, you know what? Because each diocese received money, because you could do that, because each diocese,
it's like a franchise, right?
Basically,
but 4.3 billion out of the what was the earmark? 55 billion.
I don't know.
It's like damn near 10%.
I can believe that.
Okay, so you were saying money, it goes away. So white people get mad.
Oh yeah. See, that's what I said. They don't really understand what they're doing. And you talked about that these same white women who will be voting for Donald Trump and screaming, get rid of affirmative action. They don't realize that they are a beneficiary of affirmative action. But so
that's the same thing with Obamacare. Like man, fuck that Obamacare. Fuck it. Well, where you got your health care from?
Obamacare.
No, I got the Affordable Health Care Act.
Oh,
it's the same shit.
Funny story. Well, not funny because they were stupid. My auntie was at her doctor's office, and she was on the phone with her girlfriend, just in the waiting room, waiting for her to be called. And she was talking about Donald Trump, and she was talking about, all kind of different things. Her friend is loud, she says. So the lady that was like 2 chairs over from her, because, we're social distancing and whatever, could hear that side of the conversation as well. So said that she in turn gets on her phone and starts talking about how she's a supporter of Donald Trump, and how she done, she just couldn't believe that these people this and these people that, and da 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 da. And so they called her name, and the lady at the desk, she said, asked her about her insurance. Affordable Care Act. She had Obamacare. And I'm sitting up here like, and that brought back to mind exactly, you are literally going against your self-interest because you are so emotionally
hateful.
You're emotionally invested in this idea of racism. You're emotionally invested in this idea of us versus them. And your president perpetuates that. The system perpetuates it. As I said, dog whistles, affirmative action, welfare, all these different things. And who inevitably perpetuates that?
Here's one too, though. Don't forget about, especially during this pandemic, unemployment, the unemployment compensation, which,
Correct.
as you said, is a part of affirmative action. They're cutting it from $600 to $200. Now,
that's what they're trying to do.
I didn't realize how they came up with the $600, because I'm like, that it is kind of an arbitrary number. So, in doing a little research, the way they came up is their systems were, all the state systems were so out of date. They're using old technology. So rather than having the states figure it out and look at, okay, what's this state's unemployment, what's this state's this, that, they just said $600. It was an arbitrary number, but it's because they couldn't handle being able to go state by state by state, and then having those states handle the shit themselves. But now it's being reduced to $200. And, I see a lot of hate from both black and white people. Man, they sitting around on unemployment and they getting this extra $600, and people balling out of control with this money. That's free money. Well, one, who cares? But what the Republicans are saying is, this is discouraging people from going back to work. Let me ask you this. If you were, I'm going to ask both of you. If y'all were out of work because of this pandemic, unemployed, would this $600, and we're taking your salaries into consideration, would this $600 discourage you from going back to work?
No, because you said taking my salary into...
Right.
For me, I would be taking a step back. But you have to consider, and you have to talk about people in the situation that they're in. And for a vast majority of these people, for instance, in the state of Louisiana, they are bringing home tax-free $847 per week, which is more than they were making at their jobs.
A lot of them.
The vast majority of them. So in that manner, it is discouraging. Add to that, I can sit down in the safety of my home and get $847 a week, as opposed to going to a job where I will encounter, because I am working either at a hotel or at a fast food place.
Cashier, Walgreens.
Or you could be working at a hospital.
Correct. I am going to encounter all these people who can potentially make me ill, my family ill, and if I'm ill, I can't work anyway. So when I start thinking about the pros and cons of this thing, yes, I am going to stay at home.
And I think that's a good thing. Becky, would an extra $600 a week on top of unemployment compensation discourage you from going back to work at your current salary?
I'm not technically at work now, but yes. I mean, I think some people take the health risk into a factor versus, like Ann was saying, my life might support, or right now it doesn't support other people in my household. So my life might be a little more quote unquote valuable than one other person in my household.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It wouldn't discourage me, but like you said, the types of employment, but it's crazy because the people that it should discourage, that's a good thing, because I would discourage anybody who's a cashier at a gas station, who's a cashier at a Walgreens, who interacts with numerous people daily. I would discourage them from going to work, because you're gonna go to work and make, what's minimum wage now? $7.25 or something?
$7.25.
You're gonna go make $7.25, $8 an hour. They might even giving people a little bump because of COVID. Let's say $10 an hour.
Mm-hmm. And then you talk about taking taxes.
Taxes, right? So you're still making less than minimum wage. So,
but see, that's the point. If these people are not back at work, the economy can't move, and if the economy can't move, I can't win.
Right. So this should be a really good a situation to look at and say, and look at the value of your employees. Because right now you're paying these cashiers, like I said, minimum wage, $8, $9, $10 an hour, when them not being there is costing you more money than you would actually be paying them if you paid them a livable wage.
But the problem is, as it stands right now, my business is not even open. They are not the ones that's costing me money. The government is costing me money. And the reason why the government is costing me money is because the government has shut me down. And
not
the reason
if you're
why
a
the
CVS
government
or a Walgreens or a grocery store.
But trust me, CVS, Walgreens, grocery stores, their employees are working.
Because they're deemed essential.
Correct. We're talking, the people who are receiving this unemployment are the people who work at restaurants, bars, hotels,
child care centers, possibly.
Right. Hotels, schools. So you think about, as I said, the government has shut me down because COVID is out of control. So as long as there is a mandatory shutdown of my business, it's not the fact that I can't get workers to come back that is my problem. It's the fact that the government won't allow me to open up the way that I need to open up, which in the end, it's a vicious cycle, because I can't open up. I don't have workers, one, so I can't open up. I can't open up because the government is shutting me down. COVID is rampant. People are not coming in. So, it's just.
And another factor is maybe I employ a large number of single mothers.
Oh, they're gonna get their unemployment.
Well, what I'm saying is they may be your business may be open, but they can't work because they have nobody to watch their kids.
Because schools are not open, child cares are not working as they normally would be.
Or I'm not comfortable enough with whatever procedures that for those that are opening to send them back.
Right.
Because if they get sick, that means I got to take off work and take care of them.
I'm still taking off.
And that's like one of the biggest, like everyone I talk to who has children are like, no way.
I'm not sending my children back.
Right. And one of my coworkers, his wife is a teacher. And she is setting up her classroom currently as we speak to get ready for the upcoming school year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like with distance learning, right? That's not a new thing. Like what was it? University of Phoenix. That's just
Mm-hmm.
been around since like 2001 doing online classes.
Yeah, but then you have to consider
this
the
ain't
audience.
2001
No.
where people didn't have computers.
No, you have to consider the age group. So you're talking University of Phoenix. That's
Mhm.
adults.
19 years ago.
Okay, but still, we're talking adults though.
Mhm.
But when you say distance learning with these children, that is going to require adult supervision. So think
Right.
about it. If I am at home, or if my child is at home learning distantly, I have to be there.
Right.
Right? Because as Becky said, there may not be childcare for me. I can't pay somebody to come into my home and babysit and tutor my child so that I can go to work.
Right.
And in Jefferson Parish, they gave y'all the option. And from what I understand, 50% of students chose to do distance. Now, here's where it's crazy.
I bet you it's going to be higher than that when.
Well, so this is what happens. You have to commit to a quarter.
A plan, yeah.
A quarter. So at the end of the quarter, you can switch. So anybody who's going to in-person learning, if they decide to take their child out, then they can switch to distant learning in second quarter. But the problem is this, and this is what I like scratch and shake my head at. I have teachers in my family, and one teacher in particular was calling me up, and we were talking because she was concerned. She has a disability, right? And I asked her, I said, are they making accommodations for you? She has lupus. And I said, are they making accommodations for you? Because she is one of, I think it's three math teachers, a certain kind of math in her school, right? So she is going to have 100 and something students split between 3 classes. So roughly, I was doing the math. No, it's not 3. It's more than 3 because she has to have 26 students in her class per class. Problem is her class size. You have to socially distance, right?
Mhm.
6 feet. So I asked her, I said, how are you going to get or socially distance 26 kids in your classroom? Now her classroom.
Well, this is what they did. They changed, and this is how the CDC guidelines are bullshit because they just changed them to 3 feet.
Right, but here's the thing. The reason why they did that
is so they can cram students in them classrooms.
Is because of your president.
He said, don't make them too restrictive.
He literally, like, the CDC had the very first ones that they came out with. If you would have taken a look at them, these children never would have been going back to school. If you would have taken a look at those very first CDC guidelines as far as the schools are concerned. But then they put them out. Nobody knew about them. And then they revamped them. But they revamped them, as I said, under pressure from the White House. Because, in their heads, if we get the children in school, that means the parents can go back to work, which means that they kind of, once again, all eye toward re-election.
So we need, I guess I'll end with saying this. We need something. The government is supposed to take care of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Our government, historically, whether it be Democrat or Republican, has never done that. And this pandemic is just further proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're bailing out these businesses, these airlines, we're giving them billions on billions of dollars and all these employers. And then if the money finally trickles down to the people who need it most, like the Kanye Westises and the Catholic churches. They don't need the money. The American people need the money. So most people have been out of work, in and out of work, working from home.
3 months.
There's March, April, May, June,
4 months.
July, 5. And when you look at it from while you're working at home, yeah, it might sound like, okay, I can save on my commute. I can save on lunch and this and that. But your electric bill, that shit, especially in Louisiana summer when you're running your AC nonstop.
You know what? We also need to do, cutting you off, we need to do a show about...
Save me from myself, damn it.
Really about mental health, isolation, working from home. Because some people actually need to be in an office because that's the only socialization that they get.
Yeah.
And then you talk about work from home, and I'm home every day by myself.
Or with an abuser. Or
hey, I said leave our business out of this, man. Shit.
Shoot.
First day back, I got to call it like I see it. But anyway, one other thing I wanted to bring up about education is access to educational resources for distance learning. Who is that going to benefit? The people who got it.
Right. And the thing is, that is one, I remember when this first happened, and here it is, Jefferson Parish. Jefferson Parish shut their schools down and said, we're going to switch to 100% distance learning. I have friends who work in Jefferson Parish schools. And I asked them, I said, because it was the third semester they had gone through, they missed the quarter. All right. So I said, well, what they're going to do for the fourth quarter as far as that's concerned? How are the grades going to work out? And what one of them told me was the distance learning that they're doing is not counting. And I said, so why is that not counting? And she said, well, they could not make distance learning mandatory because the students did not have the equipment, the majority, believe it or not. And this is Jefferson Parish Public School.
When you say equipment, what qualifies as equipment? Internet connection and
internet,
a device?
And a device. They did not have it. And so
I refuse to believe that.
It's not, look it up. Google is your friend.
No, I refuse to, they might have said that, but I refuse to believe that that's true.
But I believe it. And the reason why I believe it is because you think about the people in Jefferson Parish Public Schools. Think about them and information and access that they have for information. And that's not just in Jefferson Parish. That's in Orleans Parish. That's in major metropolitan cities. Students don't have access to devices and internet.
And
hell,
they barely have access to books.
Wait.
Some places.
Okay, I just had to pull it up. Pew Research. 96% of Americans own a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's your device and your internet.
Is it a
right
smartphone
there.
or a cell phone?
Right.
They don't make phones that ain't
yeah, they do.
Smartphone.
They have flip phones that are not smartphones, baby.
Those
it's real.
free Obama phones on the corner are smartphones.
They are not. But like I said, just because you own a smartphone does not mean that your kid.
Oh, hold on. Wait. Here's
access.
the smartphone stats. Okay. 81% own a smartphone. 81% of Americans own a smartphone.
Are we talking adults or are we talking children?
We're Americans.
See, we don't know what I would want to know.
Oh, no, wait, hold on. No, it breaks it down actually. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting. All right. So 81% total of Americans have smartphones. 15% have cell phones that aren't smart.
Mm-hmm.
So men, 84% own a smartphone. Women, 79%. Ages, 18 through 29, 96%.
Mm-hmm.
Ages 30 through 49, 92%.
Mm-hmm.
Ages 50 through 64, 79%. And these are all smartphones.
Where the kids at?
65, 53%. White, 82%.
No, where the kids
I'm
at?
getting there. White, 82% own smartphones. Black, 80% own smartphones. Hispanic, 79%. Less than high school graduate. So that will be your
Man,
kids.
no, that is not. When they say less than high school graduate,
talking
they
about
mean the
adults.
level of education
No,
that the adults have. Where the kids at? See, that's what I'm saying. Just because your mother has a smartphone does not mean that you
If
have a device that you can use for work, for schoolwork.
If there is a smartphone, 96% of Americans, 81% of Americans have
Wait,
them.
how many black did you say?
80%. So
So let me ask.
if your mother has one and it is required for you to do distance learning, to receive an education, to use that one smartphone that she has, I'm sorry, if you don't have
but the
access
problem
to
is
that.
if you don't have a device that's compatible, if most people don't have home phones.
Correct.
My cell phone is my only means of communication.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So what if I'm not there?
And what if you have 4 kids and you have
One phone.
one phone or one tablet,
Easy.
and they're all school age kids?
You install, basically, it's like VMware for
You
your
know
phone.
what? Shut up.
God,
Just shut
okay.
up.
What?
Man, just shut up.
Ladies and
Man, just shut
gentlemen,
up.
this has been your Affirmative Action episode. Keep up with the show across all social media platforms at Black Law Podcast. Again, shout out to our sponsor, Plan B. And also keep up with me on Twitter and IG at I am Dan on Drugs. I'm going to change my shirt, and next episode, Anne's going to show up wearing the same thing.
And I'm just Ann, and you can follow me at I Tell Legal Lies on Twitter. America, honestly, it is infotainment, edutainment. We are trying to open eyes and change perspectives. Thank y'all for listening.
One set of eyes at a time. Becky?
Set of eyes?
Yeah, open eyes and change perspectives. Open eyes, one
Say
set of
goodbye.
eyes.
But they're listening, so.
And they're watching us.
Oh, okay. This is Afro Becky signing off. Bye.